My body, my choice, a slogan that's used very frequently by the far left and especially the feminazis to describe what they call as a personal right to abort their unborn children. Now, as we pro-life Christians know, that doesn't apply because it's not a woman's body, it's a child's body. But there is a circumstance when my body, my choice is applicable. Hint, it has nothing to do with abortion, but it does have to do with your children's body. We're going to talk about SB 276 today and what that means for the future of America and specifically the future of California today. All that and more on this episode of Deconstructing the Culture. I am your host, Elisa Steele. I want to be perfectly clear coming right out the door. I am not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not. And I'm sorry if that disappoints some of y'all. I'm not. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Someday when I have children, they will probably be partially vaccinated. But on the other hand, I'm also not a hardcore vaxxer. I'm not a believer in mandatory vaccinations. If I were to call myself anything, it's a educated, cautionary, delayed vaxxer, which sounds long. So for the sake of simplicity, I just tell people I believe in vaccinations and that they're life-saving, but I also believe that different vaccinations affect different people in different ways, and also not all of them are needed for every person. California just passed a law, and it was even signed by the governor. It's called SB 276, and you've probably already heard of this, and that is the only reason why I am talking about it today. Usually I don't talk about one specific state's laws because who cares, right? It's one state. We live in a different one of the 50 states. Well, this one does matter because this one is one that is being fought over a lot. It's a hot topic and it's concerning to a lot of people. A lot of people are worried that this is going to be a wave that progresses into more states of the United States. And honestly, there's a lot of people who live in California and you're very worried about this too. And this is not a conservative versus liberal issue, quite frankly. There are a lot of conservatives who are very strongly pro-vaccination in every way. And there are a lot of conservatives who are very concerned and also want freedom for their children and freedom to decide what's best for their children. And they want it to be between them and their child's doctor. And that's the way it should be, to be honest. What I am definitely not is I am anti-government mandated vaccinations. Now, really quickly, I just want to preface this with something really important, and I think it's important that you pro-vaxxers and anti-vaxxers both listen. Nobody is against children here. Nobody wants children harmed. Nobody wants children in danger. And I think that's one thing that I'm seeing, sadly, in this movement happen a lot. Just recently, I posted a vaccination post on my Instagram, and right and left are people are like, well, your kids are going to die, or, well, don't let your kids hang out with my, it's just got nasty really fast. They're like, well, you obviously don't care about your kids. Hello? Everybody cares about their children. Everybody wants what's best for their children. It doesn't matter what side of this issue you're on. And quite frankly, I don't understand why there are sides to this issue. It is a complex issue. We can all agree, I feel like if we look at it, we can all agree that there is some truth to both sides and that both sides care about children. Both sides care about a stronger, healthier society where we continue to have diseases that used to once plague us and kill us now are no longer here and are mostly eradicated. So I just think that it's important that we both realize both sides care about children, especially our own. We both care about healthy society. We're just looking at it from two different angles, but both sides have truth. So we need to see that, okay? No more mudslinging, no more saying, well, your children are gonna die, or, well, you obviously don't care about your children, because that's false. And you know what? That's just cruel nastiness for no apparent reason. It's the internet at its worst. So I'm asking you to just take a minute, take a step back, take a deep breath, and think about both sides. Now, let's talk about SB 276. So first of all, I just want to point out that while I do think some vaccinations are very helpful, I just want to acknowledge that once upon a time, we, what we currently give to our 6-month-old children in the first 6 months of our child's life, we used to give over the extent of an entire human life. So let's just first acknowledge there's a huge increase, and maybe, just maybe, that has some risks, okay? I don't know that all of them are needed, and I'm not a vaccination expert, so I don't know what every single one of those vaccinations are, but that is why we have experts. In fact, one person whom I really respect in this movement and who is really great about not being anti-vaxxer, but also doing what's best for a child, best for their family, is Dr. Bob Sears. You can look him up. He actually has a book on this that I'm in the process of reading. But the truth is, at the end of the day, mandatory vaccinations are a violation of our freedoms. And the way that it's being pushed in today's modern world is a little alarming because, like I said in the beginning, in my intro, the left seems to be the one pushing this, which is a little concerning. But from the side that screams about my body, my choice, in regards to abortion, which is obviously not the case because it's a separate body in that case, it feels like that should be the way that we, at least the left, feels about this as well, which is odd that it's not. But let's just think about this. As a conservative, we already know that our government is corrupt. That's just kind of a fact of life, unfortunately. All governments, even our own, are corrupt. Why would that be any different with vaccinations? Why would we think we can trust big government to decide what goes inside our body? Like, seriously, have you seen what they recommend for food and what's healthy or not? Have you looked at their food pyramid? It's clearly incorrect and takes them a very long time to change anything. And why would we think that it's a good idea for government to mandate what goes inside of our body? The corruption and, quite frankly, the lack of knowledge and how slow it takes for real knowledge to go through the government is a little bit hilarious, but also alarming. And I would not trust our government. We can't even trust them to handle our taxes, right? What makes you think that they can handle your health perfectly for each and every individual? If you're like me, you understand that that's a ridiculous and laughable idea that is good in the government's hands. Now, also, something else that's kind of fishy, and something that I've recently understood by doing some reading and exploration in this area is vaccinations were once upon a time going out of business and were going to be, scaled back because there was no money to be made, and simply because there was too much liability. And then government stepped in, big government stepped in and said, well, we're just going to get rid of all liability then. So now we have an industry with no liability being mandated by the government. Does that sound like a win-win for the American consumer, the American consumer? Does that sound like it's safe for Americans? No, it's really not. Now, let's talk about what SB 276 does. First of all, if a parent wants an exemption, they would go to their doctor, and from there, and it can't just be any old exemption they want. It can't be religious. Forget religious exemption. Throw that one out the window. If a woman now, or man, parent in the state of California now wants an exemption for their child, let's say their father has an extreme reaction to something, and they know, hey, there's pretty good chance that my child is going to have issues with this. Well, they first of all have to get the child through that whole system. Let's say the doctor goes ahead and says there's a life-threatening condition for your child, and we're going to go ahead and give you this exemption. Well, from there, after the doctor has issued that, it's not just between the doctor and the parent and that's it, and that's the way it should be. No, it's now from there has to be approved by a department staff member. And if that department staff member doesn't approve it, and they're like trained and specialized or whatever for this, if they don't approve it, then it has to go to a state public health officer. And that state public health officer is going to look at it, and they can revoke it. Just like that. Doesn't matter if you and your doctor agree it's unsafe for your child. because they know your child, you know your child, your doctor knows your child. No, this officer can then revoke it. You have one chance to appeal it at that point in the state of California. You can go in and you can appeal it one time. And then from there, a panel, a specialized panel, is going to look over this. And if they don't agree with you and your doctor, and you and your doctor know your child best, if they don't agree with you that it's unsafe for your child after you've gone through this to get an exemption for your child because you feel like it's a danger, just saying, parents know their children best, well, they can overrule you. And at that point, you're basically at the end of your rope. If the panel rejects that and revokes your exemption, that's it, end of story. You can't go anywhere from that, to my understanding from reading this bill. The end of the road. So that's pretty awful. And at that point, let's say you're in this situation, and what do you do? What do you do as a parent, as a mother, as a father? You're kind of stuck in a corner. Not only that, but let's back up real quick back to the doctor. This bill puts a lot of scrutiny on doctors now, because now if a doctor gives more than 5 exemptions in a year, the medical board is actually going to look at this doctor and say, okay, let's scrutinize. Why are you giving out more than 5 exemptions in a year? That's going to go pretty fast. And not only that, but that's going to make doctors really hesitant. Who wants to come under the scrutinization of the state of California because you gave out, in their eyes, too many exemptions? 5 is very, very few. So that is really scary. But another thing is, not only is this going to make doctors really hesitant, but it's also going to make it more difficult on your family, because you can't, let's just say you're a mom in this day and age who has a big family and you have 5 children. Okay, 5 children. Well, it's not enough that one child has a really bad reaction and you get an exemption for them because let's say they had seizures or something really bad happened. It was a life-threatening or just very, very bad reaction. They can get exempted from that vaccine, but only that vaccine, only that one vaccine, not flat across the board. Nope, just that one. And guess what? Now you can't just use your common sense and be like, hey, well, my one kid had a really bad reaction. There's a pretty good chance that my other 4 kids are going to have a bad reaction. No, it requires that every single child has to go through this rigmarole to get exempted from the one vaccination. That's pretty awful. I'm sorry, but I wouldn't even want to risk it at that point. Even if I knew that a few aunts or my husband or someone had a bad reaction, I'd be concerned about just doing one child through that. I wouldn't want to risk all of that. So where does that leave current people who currently have, where does this law leave people who currently have exemptions? So that's not completely clear yet. They're still figuring that out. So there's a possibility that you might be safe for a minute if your child is much younger. But eventually, if you plan to put them in public school or in daycare or in private school or any kind of organized child care, then once they start progressing into other grades or they hit kindergarten, you will have to comply with this unless you can somehow get past this long, long headache of a government bureaucracy paper trail. Now, another thing, I wouldn't live, just straight out, I would not live in the state of California at this point. And if my state where I currently live in Florida passed this kind of law, I'd be looking at moving very quickly. Now, the only way I would stay is if I decided to homeschool. Now, this is what I think is interesting, and I don't know if the state of California has really thought this through. Do they not realize that this is going to affect their economy? Because think about it. California, if I remember right, they passed a big vaccination law about 4 years ago. And if I have it right, the homeschooling population tripled because of that. Imagine what this law is going to do to the homeschool population. I can almost guarantee you it's going to rise. Well, what is that going to look like for schools? Are schools going to lose funding because they have fewer students? Are teachers going to be laid off and lose their jobs because they have fewer students? How is this long-term going to affect California economy, and have legislators thought about this? My guess is no, or at least not enough, because overall, this is not going to be good for the state. It is the effect of big government, and big government squashes things and they mess things up, and they do not care about the individual. They're not there to make sure that we have the freedoms to do what's best for our children and our families. It's just, honestly, I think it leads back to government corruption, because you ask yourself, if this is so bad, why are so many doctors on board with this? Now, I'm not going to speak for every doctor, or actually any doctors, but there are claims out there that this is not the case. I'm going to tell you straight up that there are very hardcore pro-vaccination sites out there that say this is not the case, this is a lie. But according to Dr. Bob Sears, who say he has personally looked at some doctors' insurance fine print and friends of his who are part of the system, he's saying that he's personally seen that on the insurance information, doctors get a kickback or a bonus for every child who is fully vaccinated at the end of the year, resulting in an extra $100 or hundreds of thousands of dollars in bonuses for fully vaccinated children. So I'm not going to make blatant claims about every doctor out there, but I am saying keep that in mind. Money talks, okay? At the end of the day, it is my body, my choice in this issue. And while I do believe that vaccinations have their value, I am not saying I'm anti-vaxxer. Vaccinations do have their value. I have some vaccinations. In fact, I'm wearing a long sleeve, so I can't show you. I have this scar on my arm because I got one vaccination. I don't even know what vaccination in Mexico, and I guess it messes up your scar tissue. Like, raise your hand if you've got your vaccinations done in a foreign country and they left a permanent body mark on you. But the truth is there is value. Modern medicine holds its place. It is valuable. It does save lives, but there's also freedom. And between herd immunity, as the hardcore pro-vaxxers would say, and freedom, I'm going to pick freedom about every single time, especially when there are strong stories and strong evidence that vaccines do have negative impacts. And doctors are going to right and left tell you that no, none of that's true, because that's what doctors are taught in school and in their circles. They are taught that there are no negative side effects to vaccinations, but that's simply not the case. And anyone who studies enough and is willing to look at both sides will see that there is some truth, and some vaccines have very negatively affected people. Okay, so just some food for thought and some explanation for those of you who have been seeing all these posts all over social media, freaking out about this bill, but they're like, okay, can someone please just explain to me the basics of it? This is what this was for. And especially for those of you who are in other states and you're not sure what your state is going to look like in the future, this is good for you to be aware of, to have some thought and think, maybe for your current children or children you want to have someday, what do I want my world to look like? And start thinking about that today, because tomorrow it might be too late. You need to think about your freedoms and preserving those today. All right, before we go ahead and move on, I want to just ask you to please subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever you listen. Leave us a 5-star review. Us as in, I don't know why I said us as in me and my husband, who helps me and is my support in putting together this platform and this amazing community. You guys are what keeps this going. I could not do this without you guys, your feedback, your emails. I just got this really long email about why and how I was wrong, and breaking it down, even quoting me, and about how I was wrong in my last episode on birth control. And to that person, if you're listening, I just want to tell you, thank you. I really appreciate your criticism. Even if we don't agree, I actually read the whole thing. It was a novel, but I read it and I really appreciated your feedback, whether positive or negative. And that goes for everyone. Those of you who have left me messages and critiques on Instagram and private messages, or even in the comments, listen, it means a lot to me. I am always looking to improve, and I love hearing your opinions, bounce your thoughts off me. Sometimes it's changed my mind. So thank you for being part of this community. Please leave a review, subscribe, and share. That would be awesome. Okay, this week's book is going to be a children's book. I felt like I'd been a little heavy on the books lately and done some older ones. This one is adorable. It was written in like the late 90s, I think. It's called Ella Enchanted. They made a movie about it. It's awful. But as far as children's books go, it is phenomenal. It's a retelling of Cinderella, and by far my favorite. When I was a young child, I think I read this at least 40 times. When I say read, I mean I read it and listened to an audio like incessantly over and over. But I easily read this / listened to this book 40 times because I so enjoyed it. It was such a wonderful retelling of Cinderella and just enchanting. So if you have young children, or you know a young child, even my brother enjoyed this. I think when he was like 10, he listened to it with me one time, and he even enjoyed it one time. Not enough to listen to it 40 times, but he really liked it. So there you go. Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. Very enchanting. Oh, but the movie sucks. Don't watch the movie. The movie is awful. Oh my gosh. It's by that one actress. I'm blanking her, Anne Hathaway. She plays the main. No, it's awful. Nothing against Anne Hathaway. She was great in Les Mis, but in this movie, ugh. And also they didn't follow the book, like the book story. No, not at all. Terrible. Don't watch the movie. Okay. Speaking of movies, this week's movie, instead of music, I feel like I've been doing a lot of music lately, so I decided to go with a movie. I watched a horror movie, guys. I know, shocker. I hate horror movies. Hate them. I decided to give one a try with my husband because he has been talking about it for a while, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give it a try. It's an old school movie. I wish I'd written down the year. Oh, I did. It was released in June of 1960, so it's a little bit older, and it is Psycho. It was really entertaining. I usually cannot stand anything that even smells like horror, even some thrillers I won't watch, okay? I like It number 2, I think, just came out, and I was like, nah, you could not pay me enough to watch that movie. I didn't even watch number 1. I heard it was like super scary. I'm not into that, okay? But I did watch this, and it was really interesting. I just felt like it was original. It didn't rely on jump scares and cliche things. It was interesting. They did a really good job with the movie of creating they developed an actually scary person and a uniquely terrifying character that was terrifying all by himself. He didn't need jump scares or weird makeup or a gory mask. He was just a terrifying character. And basically a girl, she steals like $40,000 from her employer, and then she runs away to go like find her boyfriend or whatever. And then she goes, she gets super tired. She decides to stop at this off the beaten trail kind of little place called Bates Motel. Yeah. Anyways, I think they've made like spin-off shows from this, is what my husband told me, but I was uniquely entertained, so I thought I'd share it because take it from someone who hates horror movies and even some thriller movies, it was uniquely interesting. I'd probably watch it again in like 10 years. There you go. All right. Now let's talk about an end with good in the world, because goodness knows we always need to end on a high note. There is so much negativity in the news. We just need to end on something good. So I want to tell you about today's hero. Today's hero makes me happy because he's a stand-in for every other amazing person who decides to make a stand and do something that saves one thing that seems so small and is a little piece of our life, turns into a complete life turnaround, maybe even a life saving for someone else. And that's why I'm excited to share this story. It's from Fight the New Drug. And an Uber driver. It's about an Uber driver who rescued an underage sex trafficking victim. Everyday heroes, guys. This makes me so happy to hear just to see stories of our community doing things for good, stepping in and sometimes doing what's hard but's right. And that's what we need our community for. That's what communities are for. So police are crediting a North California Uber driver, speaking of California, Keith, for helping to rescue a teenage girl out of sex trafficking not long ago. The girl he gave a ride to in his car, along with her 2 suspected female pimps, according to a report by ABC7, quote, they started like talking, like saying everything was going on, like what they were doing, child sex trafficking, said Keith. Keith, right? Yeah, Keith. Then he just picked up the 2 women. Oh, he had just picked up the 2 women and the 16-year-old and brought them from the Holiday Inn, where the 2 women allegedly pimped the girl out to a man for sex. Minutes after dropping them off at the hotel, he called the police to alert them of what was going on. Quote, police arrived fast. They don't play. They do not play. not when there's child sex trafficking involved, he said. The police arrested the two women, Destiny Pedway and Marina Westley, for various charges related to pimping and pandering. KTXL reports that the man who was purchasing the teenage girl, identified as Disney Vague — I didn't know anybody named people Disney nowadays, side note — and he was arrested for sex with a minor. When asked if he was afraid and why he made a point to alert the authorities, he answered simply, the Uber driver answered, I just can't drive away. I mean, of course not. That's not even an option. Honestly, I didn't even think about it. They said what they said, and that's one of those things you just don't do. I am impressed. God bless this man for being an everyday hero, because it's what we're for. If we don't stand up and call that sex trafficking hotline, which I have programmed into my phone and you should too, and take care of these things that are happening in our communities every day, well, you know what? It's not going to stop unless me and you do something about it. And this man did, and I'm proud of him, and I'm proud of a country where we can unite together against an evil and bring it to an end. So God bless this man. God bless America. Thanks for listening to this podcast, seriously, or watching on YouTube. In fact, if you're not watching on YouTube, go over to YouTube now, or vice versa, go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. That is how this podcast makes it in the Apple rankings. That's how this podcast makes it in the YouTube world. It's because of your help and your support. And you know what? As much as I love putting these together, it is a lot of work. So as a personal thank you to me, let me be candid with you. I need ya to go share this video, like, and subscribe. Thanks.